come. Broadcasting live from an undisclosed location deep within Gothic Magdeburg in eastern Germany. It's the Unsolved Mysteries Radio Hour with your ever humble host, Freedom Dave.
And by the way, let me do something here. Let me just reintroduce my guest, Mark Clayton. We had a little technical problem at the beginning of the show here, so I just want to reintroduce him. Mark wrote the conclusion to the original Peralta Stone Maps, the King's Royal Treasure. And Mark, tell me, because I've been doing some research on the stone maps, and it seems like some people, They believe it's maybe not King's treasure. They believe it's like a lost gold mine. What do you think about that?
Well, according to what the stone tablets are showing us, there is there is one treasure that was there because of Father Kino back in the 1600s, which is a mission, and the other one is King Ferdinand VI of Spain when he sent out Pedro Peralta and the Gonzaleses to mine. There is a mine on top of Bluff Spring Mountain, and there is a mine on top of Bluff Spring Mountain, and also 20% of what belongs to the king is also on Bluff Spring Mountain. The other one, the mission, is located just off of Highway 60 towards Florence, just beside in between Queen Creek and Queen Valley.
So are you saying the King of Spain at that time buried treasure somewhere in Arizona?
Well, actually, back in that time, the king would send out people to find areas that were rich in minerals. And what happened was when Cortez came to Mexico City looking for the seven cities of Cibola, they found out that the Aztec king Montezuma had a lot of gold, a lot of precious metals. So what happened was when Cortez says he was going to come back to collect the rest of them, Montezuma took 200,000 of his warriors and moved the treasure to the north. When they moved it to the north, it was considered their ancestry land, which is the land of the Hohokams. And that's where they moved it. And then after King Ferdinand VI of Spain realized that, he just basically had Pedro Peralta and the Gonzalez family go there. The Peralta family and Gonzalez family were map makers. So they literally carved up the whole Superstition Mountains so that one day the king would be able to come back, pick up his stone tablets, and know exactly where they hid their treasure.
Mm-hmm. And did he ever come back and pick up any of his treasure, or did he? What happened there?
Well, what happened was when they came back to find the rest of the treasure, one of the Indians led them astray. They were told by the rest of the Indians to lead these people as far away from it as you can get them, and they did. They led them off, and then after that, I haven't found anything in any history books that states what happened to all of that, the treasure, the artifacts, and it's just kind of been dormant. But since in 1949, this guy was driving along the Highway 60 in Arizona, and he pulled over to the side, and he found these stone tablets buried in the sand. When he took them up, brought them out of the sand, Life magazine did an article on them in 1964. That was the first time the public ever saw them. And ever since then, there's been interpretation, and people trying to figure it out. Well, those maps that we know are real, and we know exactly where they lead. And we actually have something in the works right now that we're going to hope to come to the networks and show everybody how they work, and actually walk through the map in the show to show you exactly everything and how it works all together.
Now, are the stone maps, do they act alone, or are they some kind of cipher for an even a different map even?
Well, what we're finding out is the stone tablets were made for King Ferdinand VI of Spain, and they're basically just marking out the areas of where these storage rooms are. There's two maps. There's one is the Gonzales map, and then there's the Peralta Stone Maps.
Okay.
The one thing about the Gonzales map is it has the beginning start point, which would be the Gila River, and that's where it starts. And once you follow the Gonzales' map up to the Queen Creek area, that's where the stone tablets were left, and that's where the king's supposed to pick them up and then continue on north, and you'll find all the treasures along the way.
Really? Now, you know, if you've ever watched Indiana Jones movies, you know, the treasure, you might have the map, you might know where the treasure is, but it might not be that easy to get. Are there any booby traps that you know of that, like in old Indiana?
Absolutely, David. Absolutely. They have floor traps. They have where the King's Royal Fifth is, they have a boulder that sits up on top of the cap rock. So if you go to open up the cap rock, it'll probably come down and crush you and all your friends.
Oh, wow.
And that's just the beginning. Never mind what's inside there. They have, like, you got to remember the Aztecs, they were very good with sand traps. Mm-hmm. They would use sand to move, you know, tons and tons of rocks and stuff like that. So yeah, no, it's definitely booby trap for sure.
How far have you been in your expeditions? Like, have you seen any, you know, chambers yourself, or because you mentioned that you know you and your party have been through quite a lot on this. How many years exactly have you been searching now?
Oh, well, we found it after about 5 or 6 years, and then after that, it was just a matter of trying to convince people that we haven't lost our mind, and that's extremely difficult, actually. If you think about it, finding the treasure is a lot easier. But we found the location, and inside the book, you can see we show you where the one location is, and that's where the king is sitting on his throne. And if you notice on the right-hand side of the throne, you'll see the Roman number 5 and 1, so 6. So I said to myself, well, there's a king sitting in a throne. What's the connection? What king would be involved in this whatsoever? Mm-hmm. I found out that Pedro Peralta and King Ferdinand VI of Spain were great friends.
Okay.
So that's the connection between... See, people are trying to figure out, well, how does King Ferdinand have anything to do with this? Well, Pedro and the Gonzales' family pretty well carved this 30-foot king sitting in his throne to mark that mountain as his.
And
so pardon me?
And where exactly is that the king's image located? Is that, you know, someplace where, you know, regular people can walk and find it, or is it, you know, buried deep in those mountains?
Well, it's if you take the Peralta Trail or the First Water Trail, there's lots of information to let you know. You just stay along the Dutchman Trail, and you'll find your way to Bluff Spring Mountain. Once you're on top of Bluff Spring Mountain, I think if you take the Turpin Pass, it's called, it's easier. I've never taken that. I've always come in from the north heading south, because that's what Adolf Ruth and the Gonzales' map said. Mm-hmm. And the reason for that is if you come in from the north going south up the ravine, all the information is facing you. If you come up Turpin's Pass, you can't see none of it. Now,
you mentioned a name, Adolf Ruth?
Yeah, Adolf Ruth was a treasure hunter that got a map from his son while the son was working in Mexico City. It was supposed to be a treasure map. So he went down to Arizona in the month of June, and he got led out there by a couple of guys that was working for Tex Barley at Tex Barley's ranch. And a few days later, a couple of months later, they found his skull with a bullet hole in it.
Oh, man. That's definitely something that you can imagine happening on a treasure hunt. You're getting close to something real there.
Yes, well, you know, there's a lot of funny people around that kind of stuff.
And now, tell me, because there's another interesting story. There's someone called the Lost Dutchman.
Right.
Now, there's a couple different theories about him, but I was watching watching an episode about it on YouTube, and the guide was saying that the Lost Dutchman, he was pretty much a murderer himself. He found the gold, and then he had to kill some people. He even killed his nephew.
Well, that's what they say.
Okay.
That's what they say. But from what I understand it to be is they found Jacob Walsh. They found Jacob Walsh's buddy, Jacob Weiser, stuck under a boulder in Needle Canyon, which is the same place that they found Adolf Ruth's skull. It was in Needle Canyon. From my deduction and understanding Jacob Walsh's story, and there was a map that he gave to Julia Thomas, that if you look at the map that Jacob supposedly gave to Julia Thomas, and there is a mine on Blood Spring Mountain, that map Julia Thomas had is exactly the right ear of the horse map. So if anybody's looking for the Lost Dutchman mine, it would be that cave that they found in 1940, where a guy found gold bars up to his waist as far as you can see. Now, there's one thing about those gold bars that I'd like to mention.
Okay.
The Jesuits, when they stamped their gold bars for the Church, the Vatican, they always normally had like V's and T's on them. Okay. Well, when I found King Ferdinand VI of Spain on Bluff Spring Mountain that states that this mountain belonged to him, the horse's ear is right in the back of where the king is. Mm-hmm. But when the guy wrote the book, his name was Tracy Hawkins, Bob Ward wrote the book. He states that he's seen one of the gold bars, and what he saw on the gold bars, which nobody would know except for me and somebody else, the king, is that he said that they had a king's crown stamped on that bar of gold. So in back of the king sitting there in the throne, they found a mountain that had gold bars up to their waist as far as they can see with stamps of the king's crown on it. That says that that's the king's gold.
So what happened to all that gold?
Well, back in 1940, it was legal to mine and prospect in the Superstition Mountains. And as of, nobody knows where it is. For all we know, they've taken it and it disappeared. But according to what I understand, there's quite a bit of it. And they probably still have more of it in there, and they're probably guarding it. But, what was I going to say? Oh, geez.
Who is they, though? Who you mentioned something about, like, you think the locals are involved with some kind of cover-up of the area.
Well, the reason why I say that is because after Charles Kenworthy found $15 million in gold and silver in the Superstition, not much longer after that, John Senator McCain made it a Superstition wilderness area. Mm-hmm. It was protected from mining and prospecting and stuff like that.
Wherever there's money, there's bound to be some kind of government conspiracy that goes on with it.
Right. Well, you don't know these things until it actually comes up. But it was kind of funny that happened. I tried to get permits and talk to the service. They won't talk to nobody. They basically shunned anybody who talks about them. Either they're trying to say they're fake, or there's something behind it.
Right. They want to make you seem crazy for even trying to look, so you give up, and they
Right. Well, another thing they did too, Dave, is all the monuments. Well, not all of them, but some of the trail markers and monuments that the conquistadors actually laid out for the king to find his treasure again was destroyed. They've cut down these cactuses with 17 stones in there. They removed the stone houses that they found. They found a cave with 1,500 cactus saddles in it. They found old Spanish revolvers, breastplates, helmets, and they're still saying that the conquistadors, the Spanish, were never in that mountain.
That is definitely strange.
It's definitely strange, yeah.
Now tell me a little bit more about the stone maps themselves, because when you look at them, just as a person who's never really looked too closely at treasure maps before. They look sort of, I would even say like cute. There's a little cute horse. There's a little witch.
Right.
There's a heart. Now, when the person found them, did they know what that was? Were they looking for those maps, or was it, did they just happen to keep it? And then someone who came around, an expert, did they tell them, oh, you have something pretty valuable there?
No. When he found the stone tablets, he didn't have a clue what they were. So he kept them for 10 years, and he tried to decipher them. And what happened was he passed away, and the people that he was talking to about these stone tablets started to break into his wife's home or in the car trying to find them. Mm. So the wife got worried, and she donated to them to this person that was building the Mining and Mineral Museum. I think they call it the Flag Foundation or something. So they ended up in there. And then Life magazine took some pictures of them in 1964 and released them to the public. But they had tapes on certain parts of them, so you couldn't really read, couldn't get all the messages. Mm.
Now, you mentioned that you've been through a lot, searching for the treasure. I guess let's start out. Tell me about some of the strangest incidents that you've maybe come across on your hunts, on your travels. Is there anything strange, mysterious, phenomenon, an unexplained phenomenon, or something that you've run across?
Well, there was a couple of them, but let's see. Okay, we'll talk about the spheres, these little round balls. I've seen these little round balls where the king was located. They were just kind of like hovering and stuff, and I kind of call them spirits or whatever you want to call it, but they were perfectly round balls. And they were flying towards where I was supposed to go. So when I seen the balls fly in that direction, when we went up there on the following trip, that's when we found the king sitting there on the throne. And a hummingbird came by and just flopped right on top of the cap rock. And another one is, this one is spectacular. The very first trip that we went out there, I didn't buy a stick, and I should have bought a stick because of the rattlesnake and stuff, but I wasn't familiar with that stuff. So we took these old hollow cactuses. Well, after about 7 hours of walking, it broke. So I was a little worried because we're 7 hours in and still 7 more hours or 8 hours to walk still. So I looked up to the sky and I said, God, excuse me, I need a stick. I'm a little worried. I took 3 steps, and on the inside of the canyon wall was a brand new stick, like it came from the store. And then
just
another
there for
time,
you.
and another time we went out there. My buddy was supposed to pack the food, and he didn't pack enough. And then I asked him where the food was, and he said that we ate it all. And I looked up to the sky, and I said, God, if I don't get something to eat, there's no way in the world I'm going to make it out of here. So I took about another 5 steps. The whole different trip. I looked to my left because I've seen something blue. There's nothing blue in the desert. It's brown and gray. So I looked over there. I walked there. It was an old crate. There was a coffee cup, an old frying pan from a prospector, and 1 can of chicken chunky soup, and a can of corned beef.
Wow.
And my buddy says, are you going to eat that? So I opened it up. I tasted it. It was fine. And if it wasn't for those cans of food that I found, I wouldn't have made it out.
Oh my goodness, those are rugged mountains over there. I mean, have you or your party ever gotten seriously injured in your travels?
Oh no, thank God for that, because that was one of my main concerns. Because I always felt that if any one of us got hurt, it wouldn't be worth all the gold in the world.
Sure.
Yeah, so I'm really thankful to God that none of us got hurt, and after all of those years of climbing around those shell rock and all that kind of stuff, I'm really thankful for that.
Now tell me a little bit about your have you gone through any personal struggles in your travels? I know just from watching other stories on YouTube and reading that a lot of treasure hunters they go and they people tell them they're crazy, and their family their wives leave them, and but the itch to find that treasure, that belief, keeps you going on. Have you have any, personal struggles, with your adventures here?
Well, the girlfriend's gone.
She couldn't last out. She wanted the
No,
treasure a lot faster, I suppose, huh?
yeah, that's right, that's right. But you have to remember the story about Mel Fisher in Florida, how he'd wake up every day for 15 years, and every day he woke up, he'd look at his wife and say, "Honey, today's the day." And his wife stuck with him for 15 years, and he found it.
He sure did.
He certainly did. But the drive to find it is not that. I think it's that it always it's like a puzzle. It always has a piece that connects itself until it's completed. So it's the puzzle pieces that drive you forward.
Do you employ any modern techniques to try to help your hunt, like Google Earth or anything like that?
Well, actually, on the second part of the Gonzalez's map, I've used Google Earth to be able to find out where it was located. And the funny thing about that one, Dave, this is really spectacular, is because in one of the Gonzalez's map, there was a tiny little dot, but there was a D with a tail on it. So I told my friends we need to go and check this out because there's something there. So we used Google Earth and figured out where it was. It was along Highway 60. Before we went down there, I didn't know. I knew that the stone tablets were found in Queen Creek, but I didn't know the location that we were going to go was right in between Queen Creek and Queen Valley, which is the beginning point of the treasure map. So when we got the permits from the state, and we went inside. Well, where the dot told me to go, we found the master treasure map carved in the rock.
How did you know it was a master treasure map?
Pardon me?
How did you know it was a master treasure map?
Well, I didn't know it was until I thought that was the spot where it would be, where they were telling me to go for the storage of artifacts or whatever, but it was a master map because I know that the Gonzalez's family, probably Gonzalez and Peralta probably carved those stones for the king. So whoever did that and those big faces and the monuments and trail markers, is the person that carved that map, which I think is one of the sons of the Gonzalez's family that carved that master map. After I got home with some of the pictures from the master map, we deciphered it, and I went back, and it led me on a trail where I found an obelisk, 4 feet tall with ancient Indian red blood writing on it, a stone treasure box, a man's face with a curled snake on top of it, a sundial, an ancient sundial. It was all right there in front of your face, and nobody seems to see it.
Mm-hmm. And what's your plan from there? I mean, do you plan on trying to raise some money to get a real expedition, maybe with some heavy duty equipment to really try and find the treasure?
No, because we already know where the treasure is. We already know where the doors are. We already know, we already know where it is. We know it's on land that if we try and do anything, we could be in a whole lot of trouble. What we're going to do, you see, there's a language behind this whole thing too, where they use the shadows, the sun symbols, and we're going to be getting a show probably shortly, hopefully, and what we're going to do is we're going to try and teach the world how to read these shadows and sun symbols and monuments and trail markers that actually lead to lost civilizations and storage rooms that was taught to the higher society, which would be the Masons, the Zions, the King, the Vatican. All of these people have had this language that appears at certain times of the day and certain places you have to be able to show these things. But at the end of the show, what we're going to do, as you mentioned, Indiana Jones, Raiders of the Lost Ark and stuff, in this site where we are, at a specific time, I can't tell you right now, but the sun will rise and come through a little hole, and it will point right at the door.
Wow.
Yeah,
that is cool.
It's most incredible, is what it is.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and how they place the rocks to make these little characters, elephants, people, and stuff. It's almost like it was their TV back in that day.
Now you're actually the park is protected now, so you can't really go and take anything from the park, correct? even if you found gold.
Correct. That's correct. But what we could do is we can let the world know about it, and hopefully enough people will phone Stephen Ross at the State Department archaeologist and have him do something about it. Because the way we're looking at it is, if the state doesn't do the proper thing with it and put these things in a museum for us to learn from and everybody to see these most magnificent things from the past that have been left there, if they do not do that the proper way, then I'm sure there's going to be boys packing some dynamite in there.
Yeah, it'd be very nice if there was some kind of museum of some type that people could see these treasures that are on their land.
Yeah, for just like the same thing that Mel Fisher did in Florida. Like, I mean, it must be spectacular to go to Mel Fisher's museum and see all of that old Spanish gold and chains and emeralds and all those old, just all that beautiful art.
Absolutely, I've been there. I've seen it. It's amazing.
Yeah, I know Kim Fisher actually.
I always wanted to. Maybe in another life, I'll be able to get on a treasure expedition and go deep sea diving. But that is one fun hobby you got there. I guess it's much more than a hobby for you though now, isn't it?
Well, I mean, it's kind of taken its toll on me, but in the very beginning, it was fantastic. I just find that what we stumbled upon is just for everybody to know about, and I think that if the Forest Service in the state of Arizona would just listen to the person that knows, then something would be done. But there's been so many people over the years, 100 or more, saying they found it, ESP, all of this, They find out that it's dental gold. The guy had a news conference. One guy said he found it. There was the Arizona state was all booked within an hour. You couldn't get a hotel if you wanted to. So all of this stuff has brought so much almost problems to the state because of the lies. But the truth is here now.
Now, Mark, we're coming up on a hard break, so just really quick, can you tell my audience where they can find your book?
Yes, it's at the Superstition Mountain Museum, Amazon.com. Basically, it's everywhere on the website.
Okay, good.
On the internet.
Mark, we're going to a break now. Do you have some more time to talk a little bit more?
Absolutely.
Okay, hold on a second. We're going to go for a break, and we'll be back in about 10 minutes, 5 or 10 minutes. So thank you very much for tuning in, guys, and see you in a couple minutes with more from author Mark Clayton.
The Unsolved Mysteries Radio Hour will be right back after this. We're back with the Unsolved Mysteries Radio Hour. Now your host, Freedom Dave.
Okay, welcome back, guys. Welcome back to Unsolved Mysteries, and we're here today with author Mark Clayton. And Mark wrote a very interesting book called The Conclusion to the Original Peralta Stone Maps, the King's Royal Treasure. Now, Mark, I was asking you during the break. It's in my opinion, a little odd name. You say it's The Conclusion to the Original Peralta Stone Map. So, what do you mean by the conclusion?
The conclusion is just the answer everybody's been looking for on how the Peralta Stone Maps and what they mean and where they lead you to. It's the conclusion to those maps.
Because you found, you think you deciphered the maps, huh?
We most definitely did.
Most definitely have. No doubt.
100%, Dave. 2,000%.
Because, people have been trying to read these maps for many, many years. I saw a video on YouTube from with Leonard Nimoy back in I think it was 1977. His show. Oh my goodness, what was that show called?
Yeah, that's an old one, Dave. I've seen that too.
And so people have been looking for years and years, and You think you and your group are the first ones to decipher this, huh?
Most definitely. Let's talk about the horse map, and I can tell you some stuff right now if you'd like.
Yeah, please. Let's talk about the horse map with the picture of the cute, cuddly horse on there.
Yes.
Anybody, if I would have found those maps in this, I would have thought maybe it was, something that belonged to a child. I don't know if I would have had the, put the value on it that they really are.
Right, right, right. Well, back in those days, you got to remember that the horse was very important for transportation. So that's why, and don't forget the Palomino. So they were very well respected. So they used the horse symbol. But the horse itself, like the rest of the map, is contoured at a mountain. Like, for instance, the two ears are the two peaks in the center of the four peaks that are on Blessed Spring Mountain.
Hmm.
If you notice, if you look at the horse's eye, you'll see underneath the horse's eye, there'll be like a curved arrow. And then you'll see where the mane is, you'll see a circle in the dot. Well, if you put it together, it says, look up on this peak. There's something there as well. Another thing about the horse map, too, is the tail is a waterfall.
Okay.
And if you take a piece of paper and you put a piece of paper in front of, on top of the horse map, the rear end of the horse is an elephant.
It's an elephant.
Yes, if you take a piece of paper and cover up half the horse's map, you will see that the rear end of him is an elephant.
Why an elephant?
The reason for the elephant is if you look at the tail, you can see that the tail comes in front of one of the legs. But it's not a leg when you're looking at the elephant, it's its trunk. So a trunk, box, treasure box, it says that the trunk or the treasure box is behind the waterfall.
Uh-huh.
Right. But you can't get in there. You can't get in there unless you go to where you see the dot, which would be the elephant's eye. That's where the king sits.
I'm seeing that right now.
You go in that way, and then you can make your way down and around behind the waterfall.
Oh.
But there's something that a lot of people don't know.
What is that?
That big 3 that's on the horse.
The big 3 that's... Oh, yes, I see it. Okay.
Okay, the big 3 on the horse is telling you to remember something, because don't forget, you're the elephant. The elephant never forgets. The reason why the big 3 is there is because it's telling you that when you enter the cave, you must change your direction and bring in offerings to the king. If you do not bring offerings to that king and try and go behind the waterfall, it's going to trap you in there.
What kind of offerings?
From what it's saying, a hand of drachma must be a hand of gold coins or something, or it could be a crucifix or something of solid gold.
Now, if anybody's listening to the show right now, or if if you're listening on our rebroadcast on YouTube, go to the Peralta Stone Maps.com, and it's spelled ThePeralta stonemaps.com, and you'll be able to see pictures of these very, very interesting maps. And the more Mr. Clayton explains this to me, the more interesting these maps become. So this is fascinating stuff. Tell me more. What I see many different symbols on this map.
Oh yes. There's lots. But besides the elephant on there, the horse map only tells you about where the king's fifth is, which is 20% of everything that was accumulated is stored there for the king. That's the king's treasure.
Okay.
And the 2 ears, the one on the right side, I don't like to call it the Lost Judgment Line, but according to what I can see, there is definitely a resemblance in Julia Thomas's maps and Jacob Walsh's map to that ear that's up on that mountain. Another thing too is it's not a witch that everybody thinks it is. It's a priest.
That's a priest.
And the other thing, it's a priest, right?
It sure looks like a witch to me, though.
Yeah, I know, but it's not, because it's a priest blessing the treasure sites for safekeeping is what she's doing, or he's doing.
I guess there's not much of a difference between a witch and a priest, though. Sometimes it's sort of it's a bit a little magical.
Yeah, it's magical for sure, without a doubt. And then let's talk about the heart map. Okay.
Okay. Yes.
The reason for the heart map is don't forget that the These people were very religious people, so all they did was live and eat and breathe Jesus, right? Okay. Even back in the day, they used to use the Bible when it wasn't good to say that you're actually a Christian. So they would use symbols and signs and stuff like that to show people different verses to get different messages from.
Now the heart map, just to explain what it looks like, there's a large stone that has a heart concave cut out of it, and then there's also the actual heart that could actually fit into the stone.
Right.
So there's two parts to this.
Yes, Dave. And another thing too is if you see the cover of my book, you'll see two sun symbols that show up at certain times of the day when you're there at the right time. The arrowhead is pointing to the cap rock, and on the back of the book is the heart. If you take that inserted part, that's why it is the way it is. You got to take that piece out mentally or physically and place it into that heart that's on the back of my book. When you do that, it shows you right where it's at.
So you're saying that these maps, the stone maps specifically, were created for the king.
They were, yes.
And so let's imagine that we were the king and we were ready to come get our treasure. What would happen?
Well, first of all, you would start off at the beginning at the Gila River. As soon as you move north from there, your first stop would be Queen Creek. That's where you pick up the stone tablets, and that's where your treasure trail starts. Your first treasure is at the second dot on the heart map, and your other treasure is at the 18th dot. That's the big one. That's the king. The second dot, excuse me, is the mission. And another thing too is Father Kino, when he was there in the 1600s, he actually mapped that whole Superstition Mountain area. And I've got an idea, or I think that either the Gonzaleses map was done by one of the Gonzaleses, or they must have got it from the Vatican that came from Father Kino.
The Vatican now, how are they involved in this?
Well, the Vatican was involved in that because the Jesuits were out there stockpiling gold for them.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So that's how the Vatican was involved. And actually, when King Ferdinand found out that the church was making so much, he actually ordered them to get out, and they said no.
Sure.
We want something.
No, we're not getting that. We can raise our own army with all this gold. Yeah. But
it's pretty spectacular. At one time, they even say that they've seen the Peralta family coming to Arizona with wagon loads of gold and precious metals.
So, if people read your book,
right,
and follow your directions,
yes,
they can find themselves in front of the treasure, or the cave of the treasure.
Absolutely. But I would like to say one thing about it though. Mm-hmm. The one that the horse's ear is, like, I'm really thinking that somebody's guarding that. And you know how the stories are, people go in there, they don't come out.
Yes.
Well, I think if anybody's really figured that out and they get close to that, they might have a little problem.
Now, the Apaches, they believe, or at least I don't know if they're actually Apaches anymore, but the Native American people in that area,
yeah.
They believe that those caves are protected by their spirits.
Well, I guess if you're the right person to be led there, then there would be no worries about that. I think that those spheres or balls that I've seen, nothing's really scared me at all. There's no symbols that said no. It's always been come and get it.
Were you a believer in spirits and the supernatural before you began these treasure hunts?
Well, I'm very open-minded. I mean, I'm a very spiritual person.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so something just grabbed me for some reason and just said, do it.
Now, you think that the balls I guess they were light that you saw? They were like light.
Yeah, like
entities.
Perfectly round spheres. They were just kind of floating.
Do you think that they were welcoming you, or maybe just watching you?
they showed me where it was. Because when I was looking at the cave that was down there, I was sitting there by myself this time, and I just saw the ball hovering, and I went, geez, that's kind of strange. And then as I watched it, it just hovered there for about a minute, and then it just moved in the direction that I found out later is where the king was. And then when we went and we found the king, out of nowhere, this brown hummingbird flew right on top of it.
What do you think you saw?
I think it's a spirit. I think our bodies are our ways of moving and tasting and feeling, and I think that when we pass away, we turn into these spirits.
And they're somehow still trapped.
Pardon me?
They're somehow still trapped in that area. They're maybe past treasure hunters that might have died in the hunt for the treasure. Do you think?
Well, yes and no. Why they're there, I'm not sure. But all I know is they pointed me and showed me something. I haven't seen them after they did that. I haven't seen them again since then. But it definitely flew right to where the cap rock was. That's what got my attention. I said that was really strange. But there's been a lot of things that have been happening to us guys that it's unexplainable. For one instance, when we're about 20 minutes outside the trail, like there's something living in there. I don't know what it is, but I was walking towards the trail. We're about 20 minutes out. It was dark, and I noticed on my left side of my eye that something was moving, but it was really, really black. So I had to keep my eye on it. And it kind of looked like it was just waking up, and it just kind of came over the mountain, and then it got almost lined up to the same trail, and then it started going straight ahead, and then it started coasting. And it was black. It didn't make a sound, but there's something is there. I don't know what it is, but I know it's not. It's got to be from somewhere else. That's for sure. And I told the Forest Service about that. What they did about that, I don't know. But what we're going to try and do is we're going to try and capture this thing, hopefully on film.
And you mentioned that you have a possibility of a show coming up.
Well, we're working on a few ideas right now, and we're hoping to put something together so that we can show people visibly how it really works, how it fits together, and how it works, so that people will know without a reasonable doubt it's been done. Now, what is the state going to do about it? The show is going to be spectacular, Dave.
I can't wait to see it. Where is it going to be on the internet, like an internet show, or is it going to be on television, radio?
Well, we hope to have it like a reality show. Like that's what we're hearing right now. It's kind of like a reality show where we're going to show and explain people and show these things how they work, and that's pretty well the concept we have, and to make sure that everybody understands it 100%.
Now, tell me a little bit about your background. I mean, do you treasure hunt full time?
Oh no, Dave, no. This kind of, like I said, I kind of stumbled on it, like when we went there to Arizona. But I know one thing for sure. If you notice on TV and Ancient History Channel and Discovery Channel, there's a lot of shows coming out now where these people are trying to explain these rock monuments. Mm-hmm. But we have the final piece to the puzzle to show them how it works. So when they see the show, they're gonna be able to know, to connect the dots. There's a lot of people on the internet right now that are Panorama, that are taking pictures of things that I've seen already that tells me there's another treasure there, but they don't know what it means. They just see a giant eagle with a turtle. Okay, it looks great, but I know what it means. So we're going to try and share this information with the world, so that maybe sometimes when you walk by a rock, maybe that rock is trying to tell you something.
Are you aware of any other locations in the United States where there may be similar hoards of buried treasure?
All you'd have to do to locate these treasures, first you'd have to find the monuments. But I heard that they went from Arizona to California. All you have to do is just find out where Cortez landed and just kind of walk the path that he was on. And there's bound to be monuments and trail markers, or just anywhere in the world that they found gold for the king. No matter where they found it, they were always supposed to leave the king's fifth, or they'd have their head cut off.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so you can be walking in California in the desert. You could be walking in Arizona in the desert. And once you understand what these things really mean, you won't walk by them next time. You'll pay attention to them, and hopefully you'll be smart enough to know how to read them, and it'll lead you to something spectacular.
Oh, that's fun.
Oh, it's great. It's great.
Oh, man.
Yeah. And the one thing I wanted to tell you, Dave, about the heart map. Remember I was telling you they're very religious.
Mm-hmm.
Well, even in the Bible, it says your treasure will be where your heart will be where your treasure is, or something, or your treasure will be where your heart is, something like that. Well, the reason for the man sitting on the throne is a double meaning. It's to say that this belongs to King Ferdinand VI of Spain, but it's Jesus sitting in the throne. So once you find Jesus, where you find Jesus, you find your heart, you find your treasure. That's it, right there.
Treasure in heaven.
Well, this one's on earth, but the symbolism behind it all is basically saying when you find Jesus resting on his throne, you found it.
I see.
Yeah.
Or it could be the king saying, your treasure is in heaven and my treasure is here on earth, and if you stumble into my cave, I'll crush you with a giant rock.
Yeah, well, he's saying maybe the one that was ordained or is smart enough to know the Bible well will be able to get its way through here.
I see.
Because like you remember in Indiana Jones, only a penitent man will pass.
Right.
Yeah, so it's all religious. You must know that Bible better than anybody, and that's what's going to take you through that.
So Mark, just to conclude here, can you tell my listeners again where they could purchase your book and tell them about your website a little bit also?
Okay, sure. We have also, like I was saying, Dave, we have another name for the website, which makes it a little easier for some people who don't know how to spell Peralta. It's discoveryiNArizona.com, and the book is like everywhere. It's on Amazon. It's if you go on the website and just put Mark Clayton, Peralta Stone Maps, for the first 10, 20 pages, it's us.
Okay, then.
So it's easy to find the book, yeah.
Wonderful. It's been a real pleasure speaking with you, and hopefully, after your show airs, I'd love to have you back on the show.
Well, anytime, Dave, that would be definitely a privilege for sure, and we'll definitely keep you guys informed on what's going on, and then we'll get back on and let people know when it's going to be aired and stuff. Excellent.
Well, thank you very much for listening today or I should say this evening. It's about 2 o'clock in the morning here in Gothic Magdeburg, Germany, where I'm located. And Mark is located in Vancouver. It's a little bit earlier. But we really appreciate your time, and thanks for listening to the show. I want to thank our sponsor, newmousepads.com. That's newmousepads.com. Also, please visit fiverr.com/theQRnews, and you can, if you're interested in sponsoring the show, you can sponsor the show there. You can find our gigs and sponsor the show. Sponsorship starts at as little as $5 for a sponsorship, and we have larger sponsorships available as well. And that's about it for tonight. I really appreciate your time, Mark. It was great meeting you. And signing off, this is Freedom Dave, Unsolved Mysteries Radio Show. Thanks so much. Take care, Mark.
Okay, thanks, Dave. We'll keep in touch.
You too. Bye.
Okay, bye-bye.
Thank you for listening to another episode of the Unsolved Mysteries Radio Hour.